For generations, the world saw Rock Hudson as the dream every studio tried to manufacture but could never quite replicate. He was tall, impossibly handsome, and carried a charm so effortless that audiences didn't just admire him, they believed in him. To the millions who watched him on the silver screen, he was the perfect man. To Hollywood, he was the ideal leading actor. But behind that dazzling smile and the carefully polished image was a man who spent his entire life pretending to be someone he wasn't. This is the story of the secret he kept, the love he cherished in silence, and the life he might have lived if the world had been kinder. The rise of an American icon. Before he became Rock Hudson, he was Roy Harold Scherer Jr., a shy boy from Winnetka, Illinois. He grew up far from red carpets, often feeling out of place, unsure of where he fit in. Hollywood wasn't part of his plan, it was a distant dream he barely dared to imagine. But when he arrived in Los Angeles in the late 1940s, everything changed. Agents reshaped him with the precision of sculptors, his name, his posture, even the way he spoke. The transformation was complete. Roy disappeared, and Rock Hudson was born, the man who looked like he had been built for the movies. By the mid-1950s, Hudson was at the peak of his career. Magnificent obsession. All that heaven allows. Giant. Film after film cemented his place as Hollywood's most bankable leading man. Women wrote him love letters. Men tried to imitate his walk, his hair, his style. But the truth was something few people knew, and even fewer dared to say. Hudson was living in a world where being himself could cost him everything, his career, his reputation, and the only life he had ever known. A life lived in the shadows. In those days, Hollywood wasn't just glamorous, it was controlling. The system had its own rules, and every actor knew them. Rule number 1. Never let the illusion break. Executives arranged dates for him with actresses he barely knew. Gossip columnists were paid to write romantic stories about his supposed relationships. Studios made sure no rumor spread far enough to threaten their golden boy. And when whispers grew too persistent, his agent proposed the ultimate cover, marriage. In 1955, Rock Hudson married his secretary, Phyllis Gates. To the public, it looked like a perfect Hollywood union. But behind closed doors, the marriage was fragile, confusing, and short-lived. 3 years later, it ended in divorce. Gates later insisted she had no idea he was gay. Friends of Hudson claimed she absolutely knew. Whatever the truth was, the marriage left Hudson even more guarded and more alone. The meeting that changed everything. By the early 1960s, after years of pretending and performing, Hudson was exhausted. He wanted normalcy. He wanted peace. He wanted someone who saw him not as Rock Hudson the star, but as the man behind the cameras. That moment arrived in 1962. On the Universal Studios lot, a young film extra named Lee Garlington lingered outside Hudson's cottage, pretending to read Variety. When Hudson passed by, their eyes met only for a second, but something real sparked between them. Garlington would later say he wasn't sure what he expected. Maybe just a look. Maybe curiosity. Maybe confirmation of everything people whispered about. But what he didn't expect was for that brief glance to lead to a phone call. Rock would like to meet you. For Lee, it didn't feel real. Hudson was one of the biggest stars in the world. What could he possibly want with a young extra who had barely stepped into Hollywood? Yet when they finally met, Rock opened the door with a warm smile, offered him a beer, and spoke with a kindness that instantly put Lee at ease. Nothing about that night was glamorous. They talked like ordinary people, sitting on the couch, laughing softly, learning who the other person was beneath the layers of fear. When Lee left, Hudson said gently,
"Let's get together again." And they did. Love behind closed curtains. Their relationship began in whispers and shadows, because that was the only way it could survive. Lee would drive up to Rock's Beverly Hills home at night, park quietly, and slip inside. In the mornings, he would roll his Chevy Nova down the hill in neutral so the neighbors wouldn't hear the engine. "We thought we were being clever," he later laughed. And in those hours alone, cooking dinners, taking long drives, watching television in silence, Rock Hudson wasn't a star. He wasn't performing. He wasn't pretending. He was simply a man in love. They took road trips through the South, always pretending to be nothing more than friends. At movie premieres, they posed with their female dates while exchanging secret glances in crowded rooms. At one event, Paul Newman flashed Lee a knowing smile, one that acknowledged the truth without saying a word. But the danger was real. One fan even broke into Hudson's home while he and Lee were away. She slept in his bed. She could have discovered photographs of Lee hidden in the drawer, pictures too dangerous to exist in that era. From that day forward, Hudson tightened security and forbade any photos of them together. The risk was simply too great. Their love became something delicate, beautiful, but always under threat.
By 1965, the strain began to show. Hudson, gentle as he was, couldn't protect them from the constant fear. Lee, still young and figuring out who he wanted to be, later admitted he was looking for a father figure, someone strong, someone steady. Hudson couldn't be that man. He had spent his whole life trying to be strong for the world, he didn't know how to be strong for himself. Quietly, slowly, they drifted apart. No fights. No dramatic goodbye. Just two men who loved each other, realizing love wasn't enough to fight the world they lived in. Hudson buried himself in work. He perfected the act. He smiled, charmed, flirted with actresses, and gave interview after interview pretending he hadn't lost the one real relationship he ever had. On screen, he played men who won every woman's heart. Off-screen, he lived a life defined by solitude. The illness that changed everything. By the early 1980s, Rock Hudson was older, still famous, but lonelier than ever. He longed for the life he couldn't have, a partner, a home, a family that didn't depend on secrecy. Then, in 1984, while filming for Dynasty, he started feeling unwell. He brushed it off as exhaustion. But it wasn't exhaustion. Doctors confirmed the unthinkable. He had AIDS. In an era when people barely understood the disease, and often feared those who had it, Hudson knew what it meant. It was a death sentence. And if the world found out, it would become a scandal. At first, he tried to keep it secret. But his health declined too quickly. Rumors spread. Reporters became suspicious. On July 25, 1985, the truth was revealed publicly. Rock Hudson was the first major Hollywood figure diagnosed with AIDS. The world reacted with shock, pity, and at times cruelty. But something else happened too. For the first time, millions saw the human face behind the disease. Hudson's courage forced a global conversation, a conversation that saved lives, changed perceptions, and ignited activism. Elizabeth Taylor, one of his closest friends, dedicated her life to AIDS awareness because of him. Doris Day remembered him not as a star, but as a gentle soul who was tired of living in fear. On October 2, 1985, Rock Hudson passed away in his sleep. He was 59. The revelation that broke Lee's heart. A year later, in 1986, the authorized biography Rock Hudson, his story was released. Lee Garlington bought it, expecting memories and tributes. What he didn't expect was this. Rock Hudson had written that Lee and his mother, were the two people he had truly loved in his entire life. When Lee read those words, he fell apart. "I broke down and cried," he said. "I just lost it." All those years, he had believed he was a brief chapter in Hudson's life. Now he realized he had been the love of it. He kept the few mementos they had shared in a small box. Most were photos of Hudson alone, smiling on the beach, posing by a car, trying to look casual because even a camera could betray them. Only one picture existed of the two together, taken secretly in a bar in New Orleans. But the most beautiful memory was their 1963 trip to Puerto Vallarta, suggested to them by Elizabeth Taylor herself. There, far from Hollywood's gaze, they finally felt free. They walked on the beach, drove an open Jeep through dusty roads, took photos of each other laughing, unguarded, almost normal. In those moments, they were simply two men in love, no secrets, no lies, no fear. The secrets he took to the grave. Even decades later, Rock Hudson remained an enigma. Friends believed he had other relationships he never revealed, determined to protect the men involved. Rumors spread that he might have fathered a child at 19, long before fame, though he never spoke of it. He once said, "I like to keep my secrets to myself. I guess they'll die with me." And many did. Even his marriage, his friendships, his fears, much of it went unspoken. He learned to hide so young that hiding became a reflex he never unlearned. In 2024, decades after Hudson's death, Lee Garlington passed away at the age of 86. His husband, Paul, revealed what Lee had always carried in his heart. "I'd like him to be remembered as the love of many people's lives," Paul said softly. "But most of all, mine, and Rock Hudson's." Hudson never had the chance to love openly. Garlington never had the chance to say goodbye. Two lives shaped by a world that refused to let them be themselves. What could have been? So the question remains. What would Rock Hudson's life have looked like if he had lived in a time when he could be honest about who he was? Would he have married the man he loved? Would he have lived without fear? Would he have grown old with someone by his side instead of hiding behind the illusion that Hollywood demanded? We'll never know. But perhaps that's why his story still matters today. Because it reminds us that the brightest stars often live in the darkest shadows. And that love, no matter how hidden, never truly disappears. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below. Do you think Hollywood would have treated Rock Hudson differently today? What do you believe his life might have looked like if he had lived in a more accepting world? Make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more untold stories from Hollywood's hidden past.